Did you get my email, Brendan? Because I think and think into myself, but disregarded. Shoot.
Hey, Jill, I'll discard it whenever I get it.
The correct word is discard, not disregard. Huh? Can y'all erase that, man?
Can we do what?
You want that removed?
Well, the meeting hasn't.
Yeah, we haven't called
The
it.
meeting hasn't been called. The
Take
meeting hasn't been
that
called over.
off YouTube.
I'll cut it off YouTube later for you, Jill. No problem. I don't know if you can hear who's falling.
Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now, date is January 18th, time is 1:05. We're gonna call the September Community Inclusion Committee to order. At this time, Mr. Andrews, would you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Ms. Earhart,
Oh, here.
present. I know Dr. Baravecchio is not here, but Dr. Lenore Robinson is on in her place. Ms. Bazile is not here. Ms. Crane,
Here.
Ms. Eagley,
Here.
Ms. Guidry, who I think is on her way, Ms. Hagan,
Here.
Ms. Hano,
Here.
Ms. Harmon,
Here.
Heimel, Mr. Roca here, and Ms. Stewart.
Here.
Perfect. You do have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Mr. Andrews.
Am I the
Pull a call.
only one?
I'm sorry.
Am I the only one in virtual?
For today, yeah.
For today,
I'm sorry, y'all.
I don't know. As long as you're present, you make the party complete.
Okay, yeah, and do.
Okay, we're gonna go over a few meeting protocols. For those committee members who are attending virtually, remember that you must keep your camera on, make sure that your name and last name is shown. Please keep our microphones muted until called upon by the chairperson. Please electronically raise your hand to request to speak and wait to be called on by the chairperson. For attendees, once recognized by the chair to speak, turn your microphone on, but once completed, please return it back to mute. Also, please use the chat box only to make comments about relevant items being discussed. Please keep in mind, sometimes we do get lost in the chat, depending on how active the chat is. So I encourage all virtual participants to raise your hand and request to speak if you have something you would like to share or ask. Staff will help keep track of those of you who virtually and in person who raise your hand, requesting to speak, and I recognize you. Please be patient with it. As for order, committee members in person and virtually will be allowed to speak first. So we'll do our council members first and public members in person, and then we'll be called on followed by the public participating virtually. Members of the public who are here in person, if you would like to speak, I don't see any at the moment, please form a line at the end of the table and we'll wait to be called on. Finally, comments about a person's character will not be allowed. So at this point, I'm going to move toward the approval of the October meeting summary. Everyone should have received received and reviewed the October summary that was attached in the agenda that you received by email. Are there any objections to the summary? Not hearing any, we can approve the summary by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? Hearing no objections, the October meeting summary has been passed by unanimous consent. At this point, I'm going to yield the floor to Ms. Julia Hagan for non-contractual updates.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. You all should have gotten a report from me as well ahead of time. The first item on here is the Act 421 Children's Medicaid option. During the last meeting, I was asked to provide some more detailed information in terms of the children who had been approved and the children who had been denied in the for the TEFRA program. We tried to pull this data in lots of different ways. There's lots of different ways this could be presented. There's lots of, so we just did our best to try to break it down in the ways that some folks had asked. So the first chart shows you a breakdown of the approvals and denials and the total. Some people withdraw. So after they apply, they decide they don't want to continue in the program and they withdraw. So it shows you by our regional entities, regions 1 through 10, and it breaks it down that way. We also looked at age groups, so you could see approved, denied, or closed, and we broke it. There was some question about the birth to 2-year-olds, and then you guys can see that we then broke it down into 3 to 10 and 11 to 18. 18 is the oldest age to apply for TEFRA. We then looked at, and these are the things that are in our system that we were able to break down by race. I will share with you guys, there's a lot more selections people can make for race, but what we included here, although I'm not sure why Native American, what we did is we pulled the ones for which someone had identified as that race on their application. And if it's not listed here, then it was a 0. And so we did not include it in the report because it could get lengthy if we listed everything. The other thing that the database captures is ethnicity in terms of Hispanic, non-Hispanic, or ethnicity unknown, which means the person chose not to. So we broke the data down that way, again, by, and I should have said this at the beginning, by race and by ethnicity and by age groups, but then in terms of the approvals and the denials. And then finally, we did a breakdown by gender. Male, female, our system does have an ability to say transgender or unknown, but that was zeroed out. So I guess I'll stop there and see if there's any, you guys had asked me for that information. This was what we pulled. Does this make sense to present it this way? Is this something you guys want on a regular basis, or are there any suggestions about how this is reported? We're happy to hear them.
No comments from the council members inside the room. Do we have any comment, any council virtual?
No, sir.
Do you have any questions or comments in the chat? Okay.
They like it.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll continue to pull this and, you know, one of the things that I have talked to my teams about, you know, I appreciate the feedback that we get from the council when we look at this data. But whether it's this data or even, I meant to say this at the Act 378, we're going to try to do. And sometimes it's hard, as we talked about the timing, sometimes the timing is off, but what I would like to do better is when we are presenting. So if this is something that you guys want to see, I'm going to ask my team to actually look at this data, look for some trends and patterns. Is there anything we see, you know, on our end? Because we have a whole business analytics team that we might be able to bring that, you know, this is something we're seeing, this is what we're doing to address it. I want to make sure that if this data is important to you guys, it should be important to us too. So we need to be looking at it and see, does this data influence things that we might need to do differently or at least dive into? So we'll also be looking at this ahead of time so that we can note my TEFRA team, and we'll work jointly. OCDD and Medicaid really work jointly on TEFRA. So we'll continue. They have a kind of a work group that works. So they'll be reviewing this data too. So,
And I like the breakdown for each region to kind of see if we have any hotspots, if you will, or applicants in one area. And if that's the case, why? We can start asking those questions, and maybe there's better outreach in that area, or you know the population in that area it's needed. I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting piece. You'll have.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hano, you're recognized by Jay Elko.
I'm not a grad person in like I just want to dot my eyes, but like so let's say in capital area human service district 161 were approved and 20 were denied, and then 194 met the level of care, correct?
no, there was 194 applications from capital area.
Okay,
Of those 194, 161 were approved, 20 were denied, and 13 chose to withdraw or ask that their case be closed.
so we had in total for the year, we had 1,009 people apply to TEFRA, right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Other council members in the room have questions?
One question.
Go ahead, you recognize.
My name is Brooke. And my question was, once they are approved for the TEFRA, that stays with them until they're 18, or?
There will, as long as they meet level of care, there will be level of care redeterminations. They haven't been doing that during the public health emergency, and I'll actually have something I want to share outside of the report about public health emergency. But within the next year, they'll go back to every year they'll do what they call a redetermination to make sure that the child still meets the level of care that got them into TEFRA. So they will have that annual redetermination process.
Thank you.
All right, satisfied, Ms. Stewart?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Hagan. Do we have any other council members with any questions?
Let me continue with my report.
I think there is one at one page.
You have something in the chat? Let me check.
Know why a family would ask for their case to be withdrawn?
The anecdotal data that I've asked that question. So when you apply for TEFRA, or actually when you apply for any kind of a Medicaid program, there is a requirement that some personal and financial information be shared, even though TEFRA waives the family income, it's still a federal requirement that there's certain pieces of information that we have to gather, which means there's some sharing of personal information. From what I can gather, and again, this is anecdotal, I don't have data, but when I've asked that question, the majority of the times families were not comfortable sharing some of the personal information that's required. And so they've asked to withdraw so that they don't have to provide that information. Other reasons or maybe situations change, but I think primarily that's been the feedback we've gotten when I've asked about that, is that folks aren't comfortable sharing that information. But I can ask that they drill down and see if there's any more info about why withdraw.
I can see that. Do we have any other questions in the chat?
Yes, Christy Curtis said, here in Region 4, I'm hearing financial information.
Okay, so the financial information is probably one of the reasons for, thank you for that. Do you have any other questions or comments in the chat? Okay, moving forward, Ms. Hagan, you have the floor.
Okay. In the report, I just shared updates from things that we've talked about before. In terms of the budget, the only thing that we really still have outstanding in our budget is the transportation rate increases. Excuse me, we went to being able for providers to bill a $20 fee for transportation. In the new opportunities waiver and the residential options waiver that started January 1st, they could bill the higher rate. We are going to do a retroactive payment from July to December, but there's some programming that has to happen. So providers will get kind of one lump sum recycle. In the supports waiver, transportation isn't a separate billable service. So we're having to add it as a service into our waiver. And so that's actually out for public comment now, and we'll have to get CMS approval to add it as a service. So as soon as we get the approval for that, then providers will be able to then bill separately for transportation. We do have several reports that are in process of being reviewed by our LDH management team. And I typically share those reports with you guys, but we've been kind of updating. House Concurrent Resolution 38 asks us to study the needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and co-occurring behavioral health disorders. House Concurrent Resolution 39 asks us to study some specific things about barriers to hiring direct support professionals. And then House Concurrent Resolution 40 asks us to study the cost of nursing services in our home and community-based waivers. So those reports have, again, been finalized, but are under our final review. They're due to the legislature in February. So I'll be happy to share those reports with the council when we have them. We are also actively working towards there was money in the budget last year to add comprehensive dental services for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in our ICF facilities. And so that required a state plan amendment that is actually going through the process of CMS review and approval right now. And if any of you don't know, if you are an adult and in our OCD home and community-based waivers, you have access to comprehensive dental services through the dental plans. And your support coordinator should have told you that, or should be working with you to be able to access that. But that started on July 1st. I understand there's still a lot of people who don't know that service is available. So we are working on talking points and fact sheets and information so that people do know where they can go to make sure that they understand that they can access that service. A biggie happened with the public health emergency in the last couple of months. So I will try to explain this as best I can. I'll be honest, some of it's still complicated. I don't understand. I'll do the best I can to explain it. But there's been different pots of money that we've gotten during COVID associated with COVID. One of those started way back fairly early on in the beginning of COVID. You might have heard it called the CARES Act dollars. And what it did is it gave states an additional 6.2%. So additional federal money was able to be drawn down during the public health emergency. But as a condition of receiving that money, states could not take anyone off of Medicaid during the time that they were receiving those CARES Act dollars. So that was a condition. And basically they've said before December, they said that you'd continue to get that enhanced match and you would continue to not be able to let anybody off Medicaid until the public health emergency ended. Well, in December, it's called the omnibus bill or the budget bill that got passed at the federal government, actually separated those things. So they said that starting April 1st and going through December 31st of this year, they're going to take that 6.2% and they're going to start to decrease it incrementally by quarters until we get to December. And then in December, there won't be funding. That's good and bad. Before that, it was like, it was just all going to go away as soon as it ended. But now they're trying to give states a little bit of time because they know it's going to take a whole year to do what we call unwind, which is go through. We have about 2 million people on Medicaid in Louisiana, and those folks are all going to have to go through redetermination for Medicaid eligibility again. So that can't be done quickly. So that, we know is going to take us a year. So the reduction in that money allows us to help, knowing that we're going to have extra people on the rolls. But because that money is going to start to reduce, they said, okay, states, starting April 1st, you can start to remove people from Medicaid who are no longer eligible for Medicaid. So beginning May 1st, and I will have a lot more information about this because we're just kind of learning of all that, but beginning May 1st, people will start to get letters saying this is what you need to do to go be redetermined. And they'll take that 2 million and break it out 1/12, do it 12 each month. So throughout the year, if you are currently Medicaid eligible or know anyone who's Medicaid eligible, then you will likely be receiving. There are a few people who would be automatic, but I don't really know who that is yet. So for the time being, pretend it's everybody who's Medicaid eligible. We'll get a letter, and that letter will tell you what it is you need to do to be able to, what information you need to provide so that you can continue your Medicaid eligibility. The other thing that they changed in December, and nobody knew it was coming in December, is they said states cannot, and if you receive Medicaid or know anyone who does, we do a lot by mail, snail mail now. So what they said is that a state cannot disenroll somebody from Medicaid just because they didn't respond to a letter through the mail. You have to have a second contact, either by email or telephone. And so we're also now having to do a lot of messaging because we're going to be asking anyone. Before, you didn't have to put an email address or a telephone number in there, and it was just your physical address. But the messaging will also be to anyone to please go into the portal, make sure you have your correct mailing address, but also please add an email and or a telephone number, because that'll be a secondary means. So we'll have to kind of go through 2 steps before someone is disenrolled. So it won't just happen if you happen to miss your letter. I don't know. I didn't know this. I just heard this the other day, that pink letter campaign we did several months ago. Somebody said people thought there were checks in there, and they found pink letters like strewn across the road because people were stealing mail and opening them and throwing them. So that, it's a protection to make sure that, if you're still qualified for Medicaid, that you can continue to get it. So we're going to be doing everything we can. And Secretary Phillips has asked all of us. So any ideas you guys have, like, how do we make sure that the messaging, and I don't have the exact messaging yet, but how do we make sure that any and everybody who needs this information gets that information? They're planning town halls. They're planning to put it on buses. They're planning to put it on benches. We're trying to get it in all libraries, but we're trying to make sure we get the message out. So and I know a lot of times feedback we get is make sure we have it in multiple languages, so I've shared that. And, so we're thinking, but if anybody has any ideas, please feel free to, I think everybody has my email address, but Julie, JULIE.Hagan, HAGAN @LA.gov. Share it with me, because we really are within the next 2 to 3 weeks going to be doing a lot of planning at the Department of Health, all of us together. Like, how do we make sure that we use, that we have message, we always send a GOTA, we always send a DD Council to blast. Of course, we'll do those things like we normally do. But that still doesn't reach everybody. And so we got to figure out, how do we really, really make sure everybody's got the information in the system so that we can go through that determination. And I'll keep going, but Jill, I see you have your hand raised.
Julie, why is Louisiana poorly underfunded with all this? I'm just curious.
I don't know that everybody feels like we're poorly underfunded.
No, but you say Medicaid and ended December. I'm just a little confused.
Okay.
Because I don't get Medicaid. I get Medicare Humana.
Uh-huh.
But my Medicaid was screwed up when years back with the past, a long time ago, with the gender administration.
Well, we're kind of on two different beasts. Medicare is federal,
Mm-hmm.
Medicaid is state.
Yeah, I get Medicare Humana, so they're two federal and state, two separate.
Yes, when you get Medicare, that's gonna be the federal government. And then when you get Medicaid, that's gonna be the state. So Ms. Hagan really doesn't have a reflection on the Medicare side. She can only talk on the Medicaid side. So that's really out of her scope of,
Well, and I mean, some of that extra money we got, Jill, is because there's hundreds of thousands more people on Medicaid
Okay.
because we weren't able to take them off the rolls. So since we started getting the CARES Act money, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was at some point in 2020, we've not been able to disenroll anyone from Medicaid, where normally you have a lot of people who come off. So part of that money, not all of it, but part of that money was used to be able to pay to continue to have those people on Medicaid. And then there were some other things that were needed in the system, in response to COVID, that we needed to use those dollars. So
Yeah, I heard in the new year, anyone that got SSI disability, it went up a little bit. Like this month. Well, I mean, it's enrollment. At the end of December of every year, you have to, your government insurance and state changes.
yeah.
Wow.
do we have any other questions from Ms. Hagan? That from council members? Mr. Taylor?
Heard you speaking about the dentists on that. What are they doing with that? Can you speak a little more on that?
Sure. So any adult that has a home and community-based waiver now, and then they're assuming probably around April, adults who live in intermediate care facilities will be able to have access to comprehensive dental services, which is more, it's your cleanings, there's 6 or 8 different services that are included in that comprehensive dental package. And everyone that's in Medicaid already is enrolled with a dental. There's 2 dental managed care organizations, DentaQuest and somebody else that I forget. But there's 2. So everybody's already enrolled. But before, you could just get like dentures or very minimal dental services. So starting in July, you were able to get the comprehensive more services. But all that goes through those 2 dental managed care organizations.
Everybody, I thought they said they take it.
Let me interject for just a minute, because I work for an MCO. What I found it to be a managed care organization, one of the Medicaid organizations. I found it to be resourceful where if you call it, whoever you're with, don't call the name because we're live. Whoever you're with, call the customer service number on the back. And let them know your zip code and let them know that you're requesting dental care. That way they can sift through, because it's only so many providers that enroll with DentaQuest and other providers.
Okay.
So it's not a blanket of all dentists are honoring the contracts. So call the member service number, and then we can talk about it offline as well.
Okay.
But that's gonna be the best route, is for you to call the member services, whoever your Medicaid company provider is. But don't call the name
Oh, I know, I know, a wheelchair lock, but it ain't on that.
I just wanted to
No, thank
have some insight on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I saw we had something in the chat.
I see social media ads. Thank you. Yes, LDH I know has a Facebook page, and then I know there's several others who have. So we'll share. There's information that we have that we can definitely blast out that way.
I think, you have to get into the communities.
Yeah.
Because the people, like you were saying, to go into, what was it, the portal?
Yeah,
I was thinking, there are people who don't know what portal is,
Yeah.
and so like getting into the faith-based communities, the radio stations that certain communities listen to, like those type of things are really.
and there's a phone number you can call too. You don't
Yeah.
just have to go to the portal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments in regards to what Ms. Hagan has presented thus far from the council members in the room? I don't see Ms. Hano's hand up. Do we have any other comments or questions in the chat? Ms. Hano, you have the floor.
The final thing I'll talk about is,
I mean, Ms. Hagan, I apologize.
that's okay.
I'm looking at Jill's name.
The final thing I'll talk about is that, the other thing that happened, just last week is that they did, extend the federal public health emergency, again, which we assume is another 90 days. They did not give an end date for the public health emergency. They see Health and Human Services continues to say that they will give a 60-day notice. And so we, I think folks were all just, not that we want the federal public health emergency to, and it would be nice to know more information about what that end date is, because some of the things are tied to it. We do still plan though, OCDD, and I will make sure that everybody has the dates of these. We're in the process of planning it now. But in middle to late February, we're going to be going to all 10 regions and having town hall meetings about what's going on with our waivers. What's been in place during COVID, what was after COVID. We've already made all the changes in our waivers, so we know what'll be in place after, the public health emergency ends. And so we'll be trying to get into communities, Bambi, like you said, and really we will have a couple of webinars in addition to that, but we'll have in-person meetings and webinars available. And of course, at those, we'll talk about the Medicaid unwind, but, but more focused really on our OCD waivers, so that we can make sure people have the information to really start planning for what will happen when the public health emergency ends. So I'll definitely be sharing that with everybody, and hope you guys can try to attend some of those meetings. So.
In regards to that, I guess maybe it's a previous statement about getting the message out. Like when people go to their provider, couldn't the providers gather that information? Is there a way to?
Oh, yeah. Providers and support coordinators. That's one of the things we'll be doing, is working. Honestly, I'm not really worried about our waiver population very much.
No, I'm thinking about the broader population.
But even the broad, yeah. So we'll definitely make sure that they all have that messaging. And that's, Secretary Phillips in a meeting, we met with the Provider Association Executive Directors just yesterday, and some of their board members. And that's what she was saying. It's not for providers. I mean, you're in the house and maybe that person is receiving Medicaid, but we need to make sure the whole family knows. If there's anybody else in the family who, it doesn't just need to be our waiver population. Any other folks that you run across, and we need to make sure that messaging gets out that way.
What I'm saying is, if I have Medicaid and I go to my doctor, couldn't my doctor get that information from me and somehow submit that, or have some way to have me submit it, right there? Hey, we need you to do this update. What she's asking for, like the Medicaid, for the phone number and the email addresses. They're saying if they can't reach somebody by a letter in the mail, and they need to get those other ways of contact, when you go to your provider.
You meant like you go to your doctors. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
I can ask that question.
Mhm.
Any other questions from council members in the room in regards to what Ms. Hagan is presenting? Mr. Taylor?
What if what if some people don't have email access to internet, and then they can't get, the necessary paperwork? Is that a plan that y'all on?
I know that they have telephone numbers and I know that they have many, places across Louisiana that are what you call Medicaid application centers where people can bring their information to. So yeah, that's a good point, though. We probably need to, I don't know where they all are, so we probably need to make sure any of the messaging includes at least where can I go? Where can I bring that? So, and I think they tell you that if you can get, to that 1-800 number, I think they can tell you where the nearest Medicaid.
Something that plays right there. No, that was just my.
Any other questions or comments from council members in the room? Not seeing any, do we have, Ms. Hano, your hand is raised, I see you have the floor.
Thank you. So, Julie, is this Medicaid letter we're gonna get? Like you were talking, and I assumed it's the steps that I as a recipient have to take is are gonna be very similar to the pink letter campaign. Like, I'm a Medicaid recipient and I still use my services, correct?
Yeah, so what the pink letter campaign did was tried to say, if you are a Medicaid person, we've now mailed out a pink letter to everybody that is that receives Medicaid. If you didn't get a pink letter, then we don't have your correct information. So you need to call this number or go. And so that was what the pink letter did. But what this is this is really going to be us having more information. It's just going to be really critical that we have the contact information so that when it is time for you to go through your renewal, that you know that and you understand what all you have to send. And some of that's hard to explain because there's so many different types. They call them eligibility groups. So there's lots of different ways you can become eligible in Medicaid. And so depending on what group you're in is going to depend on the type of information you have to provide. So it's not the same for everyone. So that's why it's important that they have your contact information. So you get that letter and it'll tell you exactly what it is that you need to send in based on why you're eligible for Medicaid. Does that make sense, Jill?
Yes, it does.
Do we have any questions or comments in the chat?
Thank you.
Julie Foles said Region 3 FHF would love to help with the town hall meetings in their region.
Any hands lighting the load? Do we have any other comments in regards to what has just been presented by Ms. Hagan? And in the chat,
Sir,
Ms. Hagan, does that conclude your?
That concludes my report.
All right, moving forward, thank you, Ms. Hagan. Moving forward, now we're to, Jenkins.
Nicole Flores said that the Region 4 FHF would help with the town meetings as well.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll make sure we let Ms. Hagan do her due diligence when it comes to it. All right, moving. Ms. Jenkins.
all right. Partners in policy making update. We had 28 applications received for the 2023 partners class. On October 12th, the selection committee met. It was made up of 5 partners graduates one council member, and a previous partners coordinator. Of the 28 applications, 2 were ineligible, leaving 26 eligible applicants. There's a little typo in the status report.
Stop here real quick.
Yeah.
There's no handout for the partner
Oh.
conference.
Oh,
If you're
there's
on
no
the
handout
agenda,
for the partners.
If there's, I'll put it up on the screen if there is an attachment, but everything you can find in your status plan activities document, which is in your big council meeting folder that you get on Thursday.
Thank you
Sorry.
for that. Thanks for that update, Mr. Andrus.
And my key.
But yes, on the status report, when you get it tomorrow, or if you already looked online, they're just a little typos. So only 2 were ineligible, status report says 4. And just FYI, because we did have people ask, partners is only for parents of children with developmental disabilities and self-advocates. So by ineligible, they were neither of those. Of the 28 applications, or the 26 eligible, we had 2 self-advocates, 23 parents, and 1 that was a self-advocate and parent. We selected 20, 15 of the 20 were able to commit to attending. Of those, we had 3 self-advocates and 12 parents. And partners also hired a new coordinator, Rebecca Fruge, who was a 2019 partners graduate. So she started back in November. She's doing a great job. That's partners. Any
Do
questions?
you have any questions in regard to the presentation? Some council members in the room? Do we have any in the chat?
We do not.
Okay, you may continue.
All right. For the videos, as you'll know, we're using O'Neill Communications. They produced and released the final 2 videos in November. The COVID-19 pandemic impact video and the assistive technology video. All of the videos they produced can be found on the Facebook page, our YouTube, and our website. So they're pretty easy to find. If you can't find them, let me know. The council contracted with O'Neill again for 2023 to produce and disseminate more videos and other visual materials featuring information important to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. So the staff, we met with them back in November to discuss new ideas. They've started working, processing, outlining storyboards and topics. And we'll be meeting next week to talk about what this year is going to look like. So if you do happen to have ideas of videos, things you think that would be helpful, send the ideas to me. They're all appreciated. That's videos for you.
Any questions in regards to what Ms. Jenkins has presented in regard to the video? None from the council members, and in the chat, don't see anything other than the fact that the link is available. Those who would like to see them.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, you may continue.
All right, YLF, Youth Leadership Forum. The council contracted with Families Helping Families of Acadiana. So they're going to be coordinating and implementing the YLF program. That's going to be starting this year. FHF of Acadiana, they've so far met with the University.
What activity is this, Nina?
This is,
Activity 1.1.9.
yes,
Ha ha.
I think it's like the second or third
So it
page.
is page 6, but they,
Oh, the packets that got mailed, they are the ones that you have, Jill, maybe missing a few pages. We're sending you out a new one.
oh, cool, thank you.
Yeah, we just wanted to make it a little more complicated for you.
You get it tomorrow.
No, I don't have a problem with complicated.
You're a pro at it. We're trying to keep you on your toes, but you'll be
Yeah.
getting the corrected one sent to you, Jill.
All right, and can I ask a non-related question?
You have the floor, you can.
Is the GODA and DRLA reports in the packets? And
Yes,
what you mailed to?
Yes, yeah, we received those after we mailed you your packet, but Ann is right here listening, so we'll send those both to you with the updated status report.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Thanks for calling me out, Jill.
It's all right, Tori's right there next to you.
You only pick on the ones you love the most.
I know.
I have never met Tori in person, so I can, that would be bullying.
Well, that we don't want. Okay.
So yeah, so YLF, the FHF Acadiana met with the University of Louisiana Lafayette in October to discuss them hosting the event this coming July 2023. So they're waiting on the proposal for that. They should be getting it sometime this month. In November, they met with Louisiana Rehabilitation Services, LRS, and the Department of Education to discuss additional funding. The Department of Education is presenting a funding request of $15,000 for YLF at the March Bessie meeting. And LRS's funding will depend on the delegates selected to participate in YLF. So we won't know that exact number until they've selected the delegates. FHF also applied for an additional grant through InBridge, but they won't know the results for a little while. And lastly, they advertised for the YLF coordinator in November. They received 37 applications. They did interviews in December. I know it's a lot. And they selected a coordinator who should be starting this month, if not already started. So that's YLF. Brought to you by Hannah Jenkins.
Do we have any questions in regards to the YLF presentation from Ms. Jenkins? Okay, Ms. Hannah, you have your hand up. You're recognized by the chair. That's cool.
Dude, I annoy y'all as much as I annoy myself with these questions. Like, my God. It's not that funny, y'all. Shit. Oh, Bruce, that too. When do we think delegate selection will take place?
That is a great question. I'm going to pass that ball to Nicole, who is here to answer any further questions, because that's all I got for you, Jill. But Nicole, are you on? Can you answer a couple questions for us? Brenton, you may have to swap over there. Okay.
Looking for the list.
She was on right before I came on. But if she's not on, then we will get that information to you.
Yeah.
Hear me?
I know she was.
She's unmuted if she's able to speak.
I think I heard her.
This is Nicole. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Hey, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? I was trying to get on. It was hard to hear.
Do we know roundabout when delegate selection will take place in, like, can you maybe explain the process a little?
Well, we should have the delegate application ready toward the end of next week so we can start sharing it across the state and with all our community partners. Let me see if I have that schedule up, because the selection process as we start doing marketing and everything would happen throughout the spring. And then we don't have the dates exactly down yet for final delegate selection, but we are looking to have the Youth Leadership Forum in July at UL.
Right. Okay, cool. All right.
Any other comments?
Thank you, Miss Nicole.
Thanks, Ms. Hannah.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Jenkins, you can proceed with the plan and advocacy.
I'm going to throw that ball to someone who knows more than me. I think that's for Keisha.
All right, Ms. Branch?
Yes. All right, as of, this is Lacan information, everyone. As of December 2022, Lacan has over 6,003 individuals registered for the council and Lacan listserv to receive information and action alerts related to home and community-based services, employment, education, and early intervention. Since October 1st, 2022, there have been no Lacan action alerts or yellow shirt days. Lacan continues to host 2 Lacan Leader Conference calls per month, which includes updates on current concerns or issues and the development of strategies to better educate, maintain, support, and Lacan members. Region 9 currently has a Lacan Leader position available. This position has been advertised and those interested are definitely encouraged to apply. Lacan leaders are in the process of planning for regional legislative roundtables in collaboration with their Families Helping Family Centers. Roundtables will be held virtually prior to the start of legislative session. Once all documents pertaining to the council's advocacy agenda are finalized by staff, the roundtable schedule will be shared, which will include information on how to register and participate. Lacan leaders are also in the process of planning for formal legislative visits with key committee members to discuss this year's advocacy agenda. The legislative visits will begin once all documents pertaining to the council's advocacy agenda has been finalized by staff. These visits will continue throughout the legislative session, which begins April. Let's see, in the near future, information about legislative visit teams will be sent out to the council members. This lists the parents and self-advocate council members from each region, the Lacan leader and FHF director with everyone's contact information included. It also lists regional delegation and those on the key committees. Just a reminder to follow up with your Lacan leader about making visits. They will be contacting you pretty soon about that. Our goal is to have all key legislators seen first. Also be on the lookout for Lacan member meetings. Typically, once the agenda is set and fact sheets are completed, Lacan leaders will start posting meetings to educate members on the agenda and activities. Also, they will be scheduling their virtual roundtables, which will occur across the state beginning early February through mid-March. And that's it for Lacan.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Branch in regards to report in regard to the can? Not seeing any hands in the room. Do we have any council members with their hands up? Not seeing any. Do we have any comments or questions in the chat in regard to the discussion?
Yes. Renton Andrus said if you live in Region 9 North Shore area and are interested in the Lacan leader position, you can find out more here at this link.
Thank you for making that available, Mr. Andrews. Ask everyone to govern themselves accordingly. Those who live in Region 9. Any other comments in the chat? Okay.
All right, next we have Families Helping Families. A summary about them since October the 1st,
You
22.
do have that in your packet.
Yes. It could be found on page 3, should be page 3 in your packet. Centers have assisted 3,863 individuals with disabilities and families with information, referral, peer-to-peer, and other supports. There have been over 7,140 units of information and referrals completed with 89 trainings conducted with 1,974 individuals in attendance. Just a reminder that not all second quarter data was available at the time this report was completed. A fact sheet about the need for additional funding for Families Helping Families Resource Center will be developed, posted on the council's website, and distributed to council members, Lacan leaders, and FHF centers and directors once the required data has been obtained. This sheet will be used in legislative visits and member meetings prior to the start of the 2023 legislative session. All centers participated in an audit by receiving desk reviews for fiscal year 2022. Let's see, the centers that failed to meet their deliverables submitted a corrective action plan to address how they plan to ensure all deliverables will be met for fiscal year 23. FHF centers follows the state fiscal year, which started on July 1st So based on the second quarter data, the centers are pacing themselves appropriately, and they seem to be on track to have all their deliverables met. Any questions?
Mr. Andrews?
It's not a question, it's more of an explanation, because I know some of you that are new on this committee were also in Act 378. So kind of a similar concept with this report as with our Act 378 reports. Whenever the centers have to submit their second quarter data, well, whenever they submit their monthly data, it's usually done by the 10th of the following month. So anything that they did in January, we'll get a report in on what they did in February, right? So by the time we're filling out this information, we haven't received their full second quarter data yet. We would still be missing a lot of the December info. So that's why this information, Keisha had said, is not necessarily completely up to date. And so usually you never have a complete picture of all the work they've done until the October meeting, because that's when we have all of the yearly information in. Similar to what we do in Act 378, we give you an annual document that recaps everything. So there is always that delay. So I don't see any concerns here as far as stuff that's not being achieved, but that's why you're going to see some discrepancies in some of the data.
Ms. Hano, I see you have your hand up. You recognized by the chair of the floor.
Sorry, Brendan's cursor was throwing me off. I have 3 questions. Sorry, what centers submitted or were required to submit corrective action plans?
That was any center that didn't meet the deliverable by the end of the fiscal year last year. Off the top of my head, I know it was Region 1,
Okay.
Region 9, and I don't want to say anyone, but I know for a fact it was those 2. But they have submitted their corrective action plans, and it was mainly to make sure that the visits were made with the legislative, the legislative visits were made.
That's NOLA in North Shore, right, y'all?
Yes.
Okay, and then I think I can answer my own question, but just so we can explain this in detail and have it on record, can you tell me I don't wanna ask this because I'm gonna feel dumb.
No, there's no wrong question to ask.
Why? No, like, why or I feel so dumb. Why are the status report in the performance reports, the individual FHF sheets we get, always so different? It's because one's state and one's federal, but sorry.
There's no wrong question to ask, but the question that you're asking is no, someone on the other probably has the same question as well. Just you're the one brave enough to ask the question.
Yeah, why is the standalone data report so different from the status report numbers?
We give you more of a breakdown in this committee than we do on the status report. The status report is just a general overall picture of what they've done through the federal fiscal year. And in this
Okay.
particular committee, we give you more information about what they've done through the state fiscal year because they work off of their contract is working off of that state fiscal year because that is our state fiscal year dollars. But our status report is a federal fiscal year document. So we have to kind of adjust how we report out data on the status of planned activities report compared to how we report it out in this committee. It confuses us too sometimes. Yeah, it's not fun mixing federal and state dollar.
And, okay, so federal starts 1/1 and then state starts June 1.
No,
No.
state is gonna start July 1. And federal is gonna start October 1.
I knew that.
Close, you were off just by a little bit.
Thanks.
I can guarantee you, and see, I'm glad you asked that question because see, we have new council members, Jill. And sometimes they're just observing, but it's good that you asked that question because I wasn't sure it was answered for them. So thank you for that.
And a follow-up to one of your other
Yeah.
questions, Jill. I pulled up from our October meeting, the information that we provided. So for the centers that submitted corrective actions, it was New Orleans, which is Region 1. It was Bayou Land, which is Region 3.
No.
Southwest, which is Region 5. Shreveport, Northwest area, that is Region 7. And then North Shore, Region 9 area.
So it's that 5?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions from council members from Ms. Branch in regards to her report? Do we have any questions in the chat? Can we proceed to report a decision?
All right. So supported decision-making, the council contracted with the ARC Louisiana on this initiative. Training opportunities were offered statewide to adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their family members to increase their understanding of supported decision-making, also known as the Dustin Gary Act of 2020, Louisiana legislative session, and other legal options available in Louisiana. Supportive decision-making will partner with People First of Louisiana to host 10 trainings with different People First chapters. As of December 2022, new training materials have been developed. A meeting was held with People First to review new training documents. A training was held with People First of NOLA on yesterday with a total of 16 attendees. That's 14 individuals with disabilities, 1 parent and 1 professional. A training has also been scheduled for February 9th at the Southwest Louisiana Independence Center. The training schedule will be shared with all FHF centers, People First of Louisiana and Disability Rights Centers as well. The ARC of Louisiana and the Developmental Disability Council through the website and social media are providing promotion of the scheduled events. As far as mentorship participants, they have 2 so far remaining in the program, and they are continuing to receive the monitoring, and that's on a monthly basis. A new participant has shown interest in the program and will begin the mentoring process. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Branch. Do we have any questions from council members in the room in regards to the report presented on supported decision-making training? Not seeing any hands. Not seeing Ms. Hano's hand. Do we have any comments or chat or questions in the chat in regard to the report that's been presented? Okay, thank you, Ms. Branch. Ms. Andrews, you can give us up on the remaining.
Sure. So first up is going to be our first responder trainings. That's activity 2.2.1. If you are looking at that status of planned activities report, that is page 9. Included in your packet is actually information from from fiscal year 2022, which is a no-no, because I'm supposed to be giving you first quarter information. But I didn't have this information available at the October meeting, so I wanted to give it to you now. Just so you can have it in case you were interested in kind of the overall information or a snapshot from that year. I think it's coming up on the screen now. All of this was presented to you over the course of the last few meetings. It just kind of puts everything into one document for you guys to look at, and it breaks it up based on people that actually provided information. So not everybody takes the surveys, not everybody provides their demographics. In fact, a lot of people don't provide any information, and that's typical on most of our initiatives. So it is not a very good reflection of who actually participated as far as if you're interested in those demographic information, because not many people provide that. But what we do have is kind of the feedback that was provided to us from those trainings that happened last year. And overwhelmingly, everyone either agreed strongly or agreed that these trainings were successful and were really helpful as far as the information they received to be able to help and understand more as far as their interaction with people with disabilities. They found the content very valuable. In addition to that is this letter that you got from Plaquemine Sheriff's Office. And so that is something that did happen this year. So a little bit more about this initiative for those that are new on the committee or new in this meeting in general. This is an initiative that we contracted with Interaction Advisory Group. It's a group out of Alabama. And so the intent is for them to train our first responders. So that's inclusive of law enforcement officers, fire and rescue, EMTs, pretty much anyone that would be considered a first responder, and those sort of similar professions. To basically go through this training and start with the idea of looking at their own internal policies to identify where they can make changes and where they can implement within their own departments these policies and protocols, how to appropriately address individuals with developmental disabilities and how they interact with the disability community, in hopes that this is going to reduce arrests and other physical escalations. And this is our second year, I think, contract. This is their second year, I think. I should know this, but I'm pretty sure it's their second year. And so the only training that they have had this year so far, it happened in October, right around the time that we were doing our meeting. It was in Plaquemines Parish. And so the entirety of Plaquemine Sheriff's Office was trained. I think it was 266 first responders that were trained there. They also hosted a community event, which is more so to get the community involved as far as interacting with the department themselves, but it's also a training component for them. They talk about things like how to deal with elopement and situations like that, and just bringing general overall awareness to the disability community, to the community at large. And so there were 36 people that attended that training. And so this letter that we provided for you is just something that came from the Plaquemine Parish Sheriff's Office, just talking about the training in particular and how valuable they found that training to be. I certainly won't read it because it is in your packet. It's a page, it's quite detailed. And so I just thought it was a really nice letter that they sent just to the trainer, just to show how impactful they felt that training was. And in fact, they are going back to Plaquemines Parish in July, I believe, because they're going to train the fire department there. And it's going to be a total whole agency training. They're also in May going to go to, I think, Terrebonne Sheriff's Office. And they're working with St. Charles Parish Sheriff's Office right now. They haven't scheduled it yet, but all three of those have committed to be whole agency training. So it's not just kind of what we saw last year where you might have a few from each department. This is them coming in, driving in for a few days at a time to be able to work with the schedules for the entire department to be trained. Outside of October, we didn't see a whole lot of trainings in November, December, and you probably won't see any this month as well. That's kind of historical. We've seen it in the years that they've done these trainings in the past. With the holidays, they don't get a whole lot of people that commit. So generally Dustin is his name. He's the guy that does the training. He spends a lot of the holiday time kind of networking to try to get some of these agencies on board. And like last year, we saw a lot of their trainings focused in North Louisiana. This year, they're bringing some more down in South Louisiana, which is nice. So yeah, that's what you have to look forward to as far as these trainings that are coming up. Any questions about that particular initiative? Bambi.
I don't know if you said this, so like this, first off, the letter's great. If you haven't read it, it's really a great letter. And the number of people that they trained is wonderful. The contacts is the contacts, are we seeing like sheriffs talking to other sheriffs? Is that how they're getting? Because I imagine it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to get, you know, them into these areas and somebody say, oh yeah, you can train our entire sheriff's department. Like they have to believe in it. And so I'm thinking like some peer-to-peer, like, or other sheriffs who allowed them talking to the other sheriffs who are.
It's my understanding it's a combination of the two. So Dustin Chandler, who is for Interaction Advisory Group, but he also does the trainings. He reaches out. I mean, he'll just cold call people and other connections that he has because he's former law enforcement, so he has connections various places. So he'll reach out directly, but also there were other, like I know one of the trainings, for instance, St. Charles Parish is something they were working on. They were supposed to do it before the hurricanes came through last year. But I know there were some people from that agency, I believe, that participated in some of the virtual trainings. And so it's just kind of word of mouth that way. But there are connections being made between the different agencies, recommending them to other areas.
And this contract is just, it's for this year, and what exactly does he have, what's the deliverables on it for this, how many trainings?
This year, I think is,
And I'm putting you on the spot.
I know you are. Trying to think, I think it's 12 maybe. Because I think we accounted for like one a month. I know he's working in some virtual trainings as well this year. But
Well, sounds familiar.
yeah, and it may have been, let's see if I could, if my connection is good enough on this computer, maybe I.
But it's not 12, like he came here for did 3 days of training.
Yeah, so like in Plaquemines Parish, he was here for 3 days, but he just counted that as one thing.
Okay.
It's one training event. But this year, the good thing about this year is he's doing in-person things. So he's actually coming to the state and he's spending time here. Last year was mostly virtual. He did one in-kind training last year for Bossier Sheriff's Office
Mhm.
that he came in person for, but
Okay.
that was an in-kind training. Sorry, it's pulling up quite slowly.
This was a test and it wasn't an open book test, Brent.
Yeah, I think it's 12. He's trying to do 12 live in person,
Mhm.
and trying to do 8 virtual.
Okay.
Okay, Ms.
He
Haynes?
did, there were a couple virtual that he did try to have, but there wasn't attendees booking for the virtual.
Any other questions from council members in the room? Ms. Haynes, I see your hand. You're recognized by the chair. You have the floor.
I'm sorry, with 5 steps behind y'all, but this little breakdown sheet in our packet, these numbers, like these are total training numbers and total attendees for FY 22, right?
Yes, based on those participants that chose to answer questions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any more questions in regards to the agenda? I see any hands.
One question. My name is Brett. My question is, will we be able to see a list of what parishes participated in trainings or which ones they have scheduled?
That should be in the status of planned activities. So it's not in that packet, but it's in the big packet whenever they tell me, or whenever I do my update for that document, as they tell me what parishes they went to, I provide a breakdown of how many people participated in that parish training. And then if I know at that time any that they're planning to go to or that they even want to try to go to, I'll include that information as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll mention it in this committee.
And is that like, you mean by you're updating it on the website? Is that?
Yes, the status of planned activities is also on our website, or our council meetings page. All the documents that we share at our meeting are linked to that website. Or that particular page on our website, sorry.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions in the chat or any comments in the chat in regards to what has been prepared, what has been presented? Okay. No other questions in regard to what has been presented? Moving forward, thank you, Ms. Andrews. Now we're up to recommendations.
Oh, wait, I got one more, sorry.
No problem.
Let's see, next up is the emergency preparedness and response training. So that is activity 2.2.2. And that, if you are looking at that status of planned activity document, I think it was at one point, page 9. Oh, no, we established that you got the wrong ones. Don't worry about it, Jill.
It's an odd page, she has it.
Oh, it's an odd page, so you do have it. There you go. Page 9. In your
What
packet,
are y'all talking about?
don't worry about it, because I didn't think you had the right document. I thought you were looking at the status of planned activities, and then I thought Hannah had mentioned the document you got was incorrect. So don't worry about it. In your packet, similar to the IAG information, it's just information from FY22. So this was not available for our October meeting. That's why I'm providing it to you now. All of this I went over in October, so I'm not going to go over it again. It's just in paper form for you to have it this time. It's just a breakdown of the 2 in-person trainings that they did last year. Those people that did fill out the surveys at the end of each training. This is sort of a snapshot of the information that they provided for those trainings. And it breaks it down on the first page if they participated in the 2-day full training, and the second page is for those that participated in the 1-day training. But this particular initiative is through Niagara University. We've been contracting with them. This is our 3rd year. And with hopes of establishing a training program on emergency preparedness and response here in Louisiana. And so they target, or they try to target, individuals with responsibility in emergency planning, preparedness and response, as well as recovery, specifically as it pertains to people with disabilities and their families. And so far in this, I think we've contracted with them to do up to 4 in-person trainings this year. And so we've already had one that was held here in Baton Rouge in November. There were 29 individuals that trained or that participated in the full 2-day training with Dave. He is the guy, he's the project director and actually developed this FEMA approved training. There were 6 additional people that joined for the half-day training. So if you think about the 2-day training, that's kind of the full course. You get a manual and all the information that you need to be able to go back to your department and use this information and try to make sure that your processes and your plans are inclusive of people with disabilities. The second day, if you go for that half day, it's more of kind of a crash course, just a brief introduction with the hopes that you might make some connections with some of the emergency managers that may be in attendance. They were hoping to cover the Monroe and Shreveport areas. So that would be 2 additional trainings in February. But it's my understanding, I guess something was delayed in Shreveport. I guess everything was squared away to happen in Monroe, but the way I understand it is the contact in Shreveport was not super responsive, so they couldn't get that online. But to make it cost effective as far as travel within how much we're giving them, he needs to do those 2 trainings at one time. So I think they're looking at a May date now to handle that. I know that there's some folks in central Louisiana. So last year, their one in-person training they did was in Pineville. So they had some connections that they made there that are going to help them with the connections at Shreveport to make sure that they get space available for those 2 trainings. So as soon as we have information set about registration for those trainings, we'll push that information out. I know at one point in time, they were talking about trying to get a training, looking at maybe the Houma area. In their report, now that was whenever I talked to them when they came in for the Baton Rouge training. Their report this month didn't mention anything about that, so I don't know if that's something they're still working on. But we did provide them with areas that they could target, which would be the Lafayette area, Lake Charles area, Houma area as well. They've already done New Orleans training. They've covered Central Louisiana and Pineville. They've done Baton Rouge, and they have plans to go up to Shreveport and Monroe. I think that is it for the most part. Whenever I did reach out to the contract, one of the positives they gave to us was not only whenever they go and do these trainings, they find that participation is very good, information is well received. But I was told that the response and participation that we have in our state has been unmatched in the other states they work in. I don't want to pretend that I know all the states they're in. I know they've done some work in the Dakotas. I know they've done some work up in the Northeast. I know they have some other, like, I think they go to Nebraska a lot. There's other councils that have contracted with them to do this same training. But apparently the response that we get here is just outstanding compared to those areas, probably because a lot of the information that they talk about, we get impacted. I mean, I don't know if it's a factual statement, but based on where we're situated, I think we probably get impacted more by some of these things than some of these other states that are participating in this. They do want to see more people from the disability community participate as well. Again, you do not have to be just an emergency manager. You do not have to be involved by any way. You could be a part of the disability community and you're just interested as well. Or you might want to volunteer to take part and help some of your emergency managers in your area. Certainly, you're welcome to attend. It's free of charge, doesn't cost anything to attend these trainings. But they do also want to get more of the emergency managers involved as well. So that's kind of their target areas that they're looking at now. But in general, we've had really good feedback and participation in the trainings that they have had. And they do keep the classes a little smaller. There's usually, I think, like a 35 to 40 minimum, just so it can be a little more intimate, if you will.
Any questions?
I'm just interested in like the Shreveport area, like that's unfortunate because I know we have a lot of contacts in the Shreveport area that would probably be engaged. So do you know if they've remedied that issue about having the contact in that area?
I think they're working on remedying that issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not going to throw any names out, but there is a particular person that just did not go through with what they were supposed to do in order for Dave to secure a place to do the training. Yeah. That's my understanding.
Any other questions in regards to what's been reported? Not seeing any hands virtually. Any comments?
That's it.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we're moving forward to the recommendations for FY 24 planning committee. So next on the agenda is an opportunity for us to consider activities to recommend to the council to be included in our fiscal action plan, which will begin on October 1st, 2023. Attached to the agenda, the council's current action plan, goals and objectives the council is currently working on in its 5-year plan. Keep in mind, this committee is responsible for goals 1 and 2 of this plan. And all activities that this committee may recommend must be aligned with these goals. Also, what we come up with today is simply a recommendation. Should the council agree with our recommendations, planning ad hoc committee members will determine what items be brought forth council to vote at a subsequent date meeting. You will also have an opportunity at the full meeting tomorrow to share any additional ideas you may have. That being said, I'd like to open the floor to our committee members who would like to discuss recommended activities they may have. Do you have any recommendations?
If I may, before y'all get your discussion going, just to remind you of what the goals are that this committee is responsible for. So any recommendations you make would be aligned with these particular goals, like Risa said. Goal 1 deals with self-advocacy and advocacy leadership. So I should also say this action plan is our current action plan. It was included in your packet just as reference for you, so you can kind of see what we're working on now. Because you can also make recommendations to continue any particular activities that are in there, to remove activities that are in there, or come up with new things. But the first goal that we concentrate on is individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families will have access to information and supports to become effective leaders of their communities and advocate for systems change on behalf of themselves and other individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And goal 2 is dealing with community living and supports. So to be fully participating members of the community, individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including those with the most challenging needs, and their families will have access to quality supports and services, inclusive of affordable healthcare, resources across various service delivery systems, and shall be treated equally by all members of the community. Now, keep in mind, your goals are not up for debate. Those are already set in our 5-year plan. You're just looking at the activities, which would be considered kind of what we've been talking about today. When you see activities in the plans, something that we're actively doing to reach that goal.
So the floor is open. Do I want to discuss?
I have a thing, Judge. Oh, I'm bad. I'm out of order.
No, go ahead. You got the floor.
Okay. I don't know any like legit that I just have in a section, but I think we need some training on voting.
When you say training on voting, what exactly do you have in mind? Talking about training to the community for individuals who have disabilities?
Yes. But that's all I got for you, Rashad, is voting training or voting awareness or something. I don't know specifically like why, but people, there's in my personal research, there's really a lack of information on how voting works for people with disabilities, and I was thinking maybe in some like legislative process training that includes voting for people with disabilities. And please don't make me repeat that, y'all. I can't.
No, you don't have to repeat it.
Okay.
So basically voting awareness training specifically for people with developmental disabilities. That kind of sums it up.
Sure. That sounds real nice.
Okay. Do we have any other recommendations from the committee?
Yeah, in terms of voting, to be honest, as a leader, I have a hard time voting, especially this year for governor, because, you know, I don't, based on my decision, I just want them to support IDD, and it's hard because everybody has a different opinion and I don't know where to start.
Okay.
I mean, I have lost people due to how I feel. So I don't know where to start with this.
So that sounds like you're in support also in regards to what has been presented. Do we have any other, thank you for that, Ms. Eagley. Do we have any others, committee members with any recommendations? Do we have any questions or comments in the chat? Ms. Andrews, does that keep us in mind with goals 1 and 2 of the 4-year plan?
Yeah, Jill.
Ms. Hayno, you're recognized by the chair. You have the floor.
so confused. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I definitely want to keep the videos and maybe tweak the topics. Like again, like voting. Well, it says on the 2023 action plan, voting rights and accessible options. So, I mean, just keep that at the forefront, but I definitely, voting is my jam. Civics was my favorite subject in high school. Didn't care for the teacher, but nonetheless, so like I'm just a big, like I really like what this video contract has done for our council, and just like making sure the voting rights and accessible options are at the forefront.
Okay. Definitely want to see that to the forefront.
So continue the video initiative, ensure videos specific to voting and accessibility are included.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we have any other comments or Ms.
Just a comment. So, and I don't know that we've had a lot of conversations about objective 2.3 activity 2.3.1, which talks about collaborating with LDH to address accessible educational materials on women's health topics. So I'm not sure if everybody's aware, the legislature started a new office in the Louisiana Department of Health this year. So we now have an what's called the Office of Women's Health, similar to Office of OCDD and Office of Aging, Office of Behavioral Health has its own assistant secretary and staff. She actually just got hired and started within the last couple of weeks. So we may need to give her time to get situated in her new role as assistant secretary. But if there's anything I can do to maybe help facilitate discussions potentially with that office and our office to talk about women's right, women with disabilities, and if there's any partnerships we need to have there, we wanted to add anything around that. I'm happy to help with that conversation.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I know on that activity, we've kind of been waiting for that department to kind of get up and
Yeah.
going. And try to partner
It
with
just
them.
started maybe 3 weeks ago.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that one's been on Amy's radar.
Not seeing any comments or questions in the chat. So are we only just gonna have the recommendation that's just been presented? Are there any other recommendations? Candace, will you reread the recommendation?
What up in just a second.
Thank you.
So if this is a motion you would like to present, basically it's going to be for the planning ad hoc committee to consider the following initiatives, which were discussed, and you're going to again send this to the full council tomorrow. First would be voting awareness training specifically for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and continue the video initiative and ensure videos specific to voting and accessibility are included.
So again, to reemphasize what Ms. Andrews said, this recommendation presented to the council on tomorrow. So if there's no additional recommendations, we're ready to entertain a motion. But we want to, before that, I think we would make sure, I see Ms. Hayno's hand. But let me ask this question real quick before Ms. Hayno. When it does come down to a vote, they would both be voted for individually, just one collective motion.
It's gonna go to them as one collective motion, but they can determine, I mean, we could do it as two if you want to do it as two. I generally just send them all,
Okay,
but
it'll be suggested to make it collective when we get to that point. Ms. Hayno, you have the floor. You're recognized by the chair.
No, I'm very rusty at this, but I do think it's important to continue implementing. If your feedback is allowed, I would love to hear it, but I would like to continue the SDM first responder in emergency preparedness because they're all such good trainings and they're getting positive feedback. And again, it's like good for our council and our community, but I don't know if it's up to me to recommend that or just when y'all have a planning committee, they're just gonna say, we're gonna keep this for FY24, and I know, or I'm almost pretty sure that for the, but then FY23, so y'all don't have FY20. I think I'm getting ahead of myself because we're just spitballing, but I do want to keep the SDM training along with the first responder in emergency prep trainings.
okay. Is there anyone that does not think those should continue on the committee?
No, but I do have a question.
Sure.
Kind of to follow up on what Jill was saying. So the things that are in here now that have, will they automatically continue, or do we need to have discussion of which would continue and which would end? I'm trying to understand that too.
If there is something that we are currently doing that you're really passionate about, you want to see continue, I would recommend you make a recommendation that does continue. Because the planning committee, there are some things that they will continue. For instance, Partners always continues. LaCan always continues, because those are integral to some of the work that we do here in our advocacy. But especially for things, if they've been around for a few years, it's possible that the planning committee might decide not to move forward with those initiatives because they want to give a chance for other initiatives. Sometimes we get a little stagnant with things for years and years and years. So I think if you're very passionate about a particular activity we're working on now, or if you're very passionate about getting rid of something that we're currently working on, it's good to make the recommendation to the planning committee to either keep it or get rid of it. Just because you don't really know what they're going to do as far as continue an initiative or not. So I do think it's worth, if Jill is, and the rest of you agree, that those are really important. We can add that we would continue the current initiatives and just put those in there, XYZ. If anybody has disagreements with the individual things, and kind of like Rashad mentioned, we could break it down one by one. But generally, if it's kind of unanimous consent of the particular things that we're mentioning, we can vote on them as one full package.
Ms. Hayno, I see your hand. You recognize what I tell you a question?
I have a comment and a question. No, I have a comment that leads to a question and then a question. I think, but I'm really thinking I wanna put in the motion to keep these three add-ons. And I'm almost certain that all the feedback has been positive, but I do wanna add that to my motion to say not depending, shoot, on like, just like assuming that all the feedback is still good and yeah.
Okay, so you want, so to make sure I understand, you want to go ahead and include supported decision-making training, first responder training, and emergency preparedness and response training is also remain in the add those two, and that way we can kind of sustain those as well.
Yes.
Okay, and he's already made.
Providing that feedback has been consistently positive.
Okay, presenting to get positive feedback, consistent feedback.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, that was my first motion I've ever worded.
you worded a good one. So,
And then, I have a question for Amy or Brendan or whoever wants to answer my question. Are y'all gonna, when do y'all meet to decide on what y'all's recommendation for the for the action plan is?
So the planning committee does not currently have a date that they are meeting yet. In fact, planning committee hasn't been appointed yet.
Right.
But we usually look to have that happen in March. Sometimes in February if we're doing really well.
And then before the planning committee, y'all will get together and make y'all's recommendations, correct?
Correct. The staff always get together as a group and we go through the plan and make recommendations based off of the feedback that we've gotten and the results that we're getting.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Sure.
thank you, Mr. Bill. Any more hands? So,
Oh, no, I was just gonna get clarity from Jill to make sure you did make a motion, correct? To include voter awareness training and to continue the initiatives pending positive feedback, the video initiative, supported decision-making, first responder trainings, and emergency preparedness and response training.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor.
Second.
okay, it's been moved by Ms. Hayno, and it's been seconded by Mrs. Cheney. What's her middle name?
Sawa.
Sawa.
See, I was, wouldn't even do that.
For the committee recommendation, the plan ad hoc committee consider the following activities initiatives are inclusion. The voting awareness training specifically for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and continue the following current initiatives, providing consistent positive feedback through fiscal year 23 video initiative, ensure videos specific to voting and accessibility are included, supported decision-making trainings, first responder trainings, emergency preparedness trainings. Do we have any questions?
I will say before it goes up on the screen tomorrow at the full council meeting, it'll look a little bit different. So I'll add in the current activity numbers and stuff for people to reference. I just, for sake of time, I wasn't gonna wordsmith it right now with all those activity numbers.
Okay. Any oppositions? Any abstentions? All in favor?
Public comment first.
Oh, public comment? Not seeing any. So all in favor for us to present this to the full council meeting tomorrow? I recognize by saying aye. Any opposition? Motion passes. This will be presented to the council on tomorrow for consideration. Are there any, do we have any announcements?
Only thing would be at 3 o'clock is our Education and Employment Committee meeting. It will be in this room if you're here in person. You should have the link if you are currently participating via Zoom and you registered for that meeting. You'll have a link that was sent to you to participate. And then tomorrow is our full council meeting at 8:30 a.m. Same, it will be in this room if you're participating in person, please. Or if you registered online, you'll have a link that'll be emailed to you to participate tomorrow.
Any other announcements? Not here, and none will adjourn by unanimous consent. Thank you so much for your time.